Welcome back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. Drago Bosnic from one of the writers of infobricks.com, which apparently has become censored by Google. My Chrome browser didn't want to open it. It was hilarious. I had to say that it was okay. I trust them. Drago, how you doing? I've lost my voice. You might be doing most of the talking. I caught some kind of flu virus bug thing. How have you been? What's been going on in the world that we need to know about?
Yeah, there's a lot of topics we're going to cover, I guess, because it's been more than 2 weeks since our last talk, so I guess we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, let's get right into it. North Korea. Everybody loves a little Kim Jong-un and nuclear showboating, I guess you could call it. Tell us what was demonstrated at this event that Shoigu, I think, was the star guest of. Like, that was the biggest shock to, I think, everyone, that Shoigu was the guest of honor.
Yeah, I think that was the first this high-level visit of a Russian official to North Korea in decades. And this is very significant because it shows that the North Koreans and the Russians are actually like coordinating their efforts and like we could say like getting into a closer sort of military cooperation, which is definitely not good news for the United States or any other of these Western countries, because the North Koreans have shown remarkable capabilities. I mean, for a country that small to be able to do all that while being sanctioned for the last like over half a century, it's pretty like incredible. I don't think there's any other country that can match their capabilities considering their situation and their power. I mean, oftentimes analysts call them a pocket superpower, and that's really is the case. Because they have like weapons and missiles that can reach the United States, even Washington D.C., and like they're the only like small country that has such capabilities. Like those capabilities are reserved for global superpowers, and the North Koreans are the only ones who have them without being a global superpower. So. In this particular case, like we can talk about a lot of things that they showed, but that would require a new talk, I guess. So I'm just going to mention two things that I mentioned in the article as well. Those are like two U.S. inspired, let's say, drones. We don't know how the drones are called. Yeah. I mean, we could just, we could say they're copied, but like they only look the same from the outside. We don't know what sort of subsystems are there in the drone themselves. But I guess they probably put something that works. Otherwise, they wouldn't have displayed them. And they've also displayed the capabilities of these drones as in terms of like flying and firing missiles and so on. They were inspired by the MQ-9 and the RQ-4 or MQ-4 if it's in the Navy. It's called the Global Hawk in the USF, United States Air Force Service, and it's called the Triton in the United States Navy Service. But like that was one of the drones that the Americans are using above the Black Sea to spy on the Russians and relay information about Russian.
They also flew them over Iran, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. Iran shot down one, and I mean they've actually been able to collect most of the drone relatively intact, and I'm pretty sure that they probably gave this information to the North Koreans, and then the North Koreans probably made the drone that they have now.
Conspiracy theories. Russian propaganda, I tell you. Everything is propaganda. I was talking to an engineer recently, and he was like, I sent him a video about drones being manufactured in Russia, and he's like, no, it's propaganda. I'm like, what's propaganda? Yeah. He's like, videos. I'm like, you want text? He's like, no, it's all propaganda. I was like, exactly. Okay, all man.
All 5,000 landfall videos destroying tanks and infantry, it's all fake news. It's all just Russian propaganda.
Yeah. Drones have become a thing. For those who are aware, Team Black Sheep, my favorite shirt because it doesn't require ironing for the show, is what's it called? A drone company. You should look into them. They're like the grandfathers of drones. And they're now being used on the battlefield, some of their technology as well, which is crazy. Um, let's move right along to the next article. Let's see if I can find my cursor here. Um,
Yep.
this is the article that Chrome tried to block. The other one's open, but this one didn't. Tell us about what it says here on screen, because I don't want to say some of these words. Let's say
Yeah.
the cultural diversity in the UK.
Yeah. The UK is being extremely well enriched, I would say. Like the enrichment process is extremely successful, and it's giving a lot of results. Like they're being they're progressing in a very good towards a very good society, I guess, especially when having all these Albanians there now. Don't mind the the surge in narco trafficking and prostitution and stuff like that. Like that's all like part of the process of becoming a more progressive society, right? I also don't mind the gun running and all these other things in which like all these other ways in which Albanians are enriching the UK society. But
Drago, you're a regular here, you know, but there's new subscribers every day, even though I was offline for a while. So I want to tell the new subscribers, in case they're not aware, this is a comedy show. Nothing here has anything to do with reality. These are just like propaganda tropes and memes that we talk about. Sorry to interrupt, but my subscribers love it when I interrupt. That's sarcasm also. Anyway.
yeah. I mean, I was just about to say that considering how much help the UK provided to the Albanians when they were fighting us, I can't say I feel sorry for them at all. Like, on the contrary, I'm glad that they're finally experiencing the cultural enrichment that they wanted to ensure for us.
Um, yeah, it's Возмездие in Russian, or
Yep.
retribution of the holy kind. What goes around comes around, yin yang type of thing.
Yep.
And yeah, sometimes you can't help to see the humor and irony in some of the developments in geopolitics as things swing around, and then you wonder, was it meant to be like that? Was that the plan? Who
Probably.
knows?
Jokes write themselves, so I'm pretty to hear these questions.
I'm glad that you found a place where you can find the light side of the work that you do on a regular basis. Because, like, I don't know how you could, how I couldn't sit down and write a serious article about this stuff without cracking some jokes. And you do it on the regular. So, for people who like to read, there's going to be like a link to Drago's Telegram where he posts regular things to his BRICS portal. Articles where you can find other articles as well. In any case, 7 reasons why Russia dominates in Ukraine. Wait,
Yep.
this sounds like Russian propaganda.
It is.
Although the
It is.
narrative in the West has been changing recently.
Yeah, like they're talking about the stumbling of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Like I've usually encountered titles like that. I mean, obviously, stumbling is a euphemism of sorts, I guess, because it's being wrecked. I mean, that probably is a better term than
Yes.
stumbling. But I've seen some pretty ridiculous like explanations as to why that is the case. I didn't mention that specifically in this article, but I think Joaquin covered that pretty like hilariously in his on his Telegram channel, where he mentions the so-called UK intelligence, if that is how you can call them, assessment that like all sorts of like grass and bush plants
The
are like
shrubs. The
yeah
shrubs.
shrubs like are preventing the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Like how can you even say that with a straight face? I'm wondering. And this was like a serious intelligence briefing, And like I was trying to like find to see if it's some sort of like satire or something like something that like some sort of a joke, but it wasn't. Like this was a serious, honest to God assessment by the UK intelligence, which is just I don't know, like it's dumbfounding for me.
Um, I don't know the cadre, I think it's pronounced CADRE, cadre of their intelligence assets, but considering their prime minister and other things, and their previous prime ministers and other things, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was supposed to be called intelligence, right? I mean, to give you like some sort of an intellectual information that you can use for covert purposes, but this, it's I don't know how to call it. It's just mind
So,
blowing.
what are the 7 reasons other than the shrubs?
Yeah, like to go back to the article, like there are numerous reasons, but one of the first things I mentioned is the like vastly improved command and control for the Russians. Like the West has been like ridiculing Russia in this regard, but actually the Russians have been very good in conducting command and control, which we were able to see in the Kupiansk area, which is like in the eastern part of the Kharkov Oblast or the region as it's called in Russian. So there, the Russians were able to like use their advantage, which they got from the Ukrainian counteroffensive being so so stumbling, I guess. So uh, they've used that like to gain a strategic advantage, and it's been very successful for them in that area. But of course, it's not just that. Like there are many other things. Like for example, the massively improved ISR, which the Russians have been able to like make much better because of the number of drones they're using. So the tactical
Hmm.
ISR or the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, as it's called in the military. Like this is much better for them. Like they can locate the enemy much faster. They can use that to improve the precision of their already like awesome artillery. Which I mean, I'm serious. I mean, it is probably the best artillery in the world. So like this has been like a force multiplier for them, and every single drone is like an ISR platform. So the drone doesn't even have to be has to be armed to be dangerous. So the only thing it needs to do is to see the enemy, and the artillery will just do the rest. So that's like that would be like the second reason. Maybe like I'm not like going by the same order I wrote it, but like I'm doing it by the memory. So
Yeah, yeah.
uh, yeah, and the next one would be, I guess, yeah, active defenses, and defense in depth. So those two concepts are pretty similar. They're like the Soviet era concept, where the Russians are basically they're setting up defensive areas and defensive lines, but they're using them offensively. So on a tactical level, that's defense, but on a strategic level, it's offense, where you would let the enemy go into sort of like an offensive or a counteroffensive in this case, and then you would smash the enemy, and then you would counterattack yourself in the areas where the enemy is the weakest. And that's exactly what they've been doing all this time. Also, like the high morale of the Russian forces, it's one of the things that that has also been ridiculed in the Western countries, where they're saying that the Russians are
Man,
fighting
they're
with
fighting with shovels. Man, they're
yeah
fighting with shovels. What are you talking about? High morale.
yeah
Like the
they're
Russians, the
fighting with
Russians are defeated.
shovels.
Don't you know?
Yeah, they've been defeated so many times so far that I don't know where this high morale is coming from. Obviously, that's Russian propaganda,
It's because they're
but
drunk. They're drunk.
yeah, they're drunk all the time, right? So I mean, and I just don't know where all this vodka is coming from, considering like the bad state of the Russian economy. The sanctions have destroyed it completely.
We'll get to
So
the sanctions later. We'll
we'll
keep the
get to
jokes in
that.
order, man. Keep the
Yeah,
jokes in order. We've got a lot of jokes to get through. But first, I want to pop up this fan art. Friends of the show Возмездие information organization in Russia posted this. These are Lancet drones, which means hornet. This is the crocodile, I believe, or alligator, one of the two.
yeah, alligator.
Um, This is Su-57 as a Falcon. This is one of the tanks as a bear.
Yep.
This is Panzer as a kind of rhino type thing.
Yeah.
And this is, what is this? The
That's
TOS.
TOS one Buratino, which is like the thermobaric multiple rocket launcher.
And I think
deadly.
this is the, what's the name of the dog that guards hell? The
Oh,
three-headed dog.
I forgot the English name in Serbian. It's Kerber, which would
No,
be
Cerebrus. I think it's Cerebrus.
yeah, yeah, something like that.
In
I forgot the English name.
well, fan art. I like it.
Yeah.
Um, let's get back to your articles. Let me switch over here. Everybody, thank you for sticking around with my terrible voice and our amazing humor. America, behind massive surge in Kiev's child stuff that we can't talk about because we're YouTube. Everybody's most recently favorite movie by that one Australian guy.
Yeah, the Sound of Freedom, which of course is right. I'm not supposed to say it. Um, like the sound
Have you
of
watched it?
yes.
Has the torrent come out yet? I haven't seen if the torrent has
Uh,
come out
I
yet.
still haven't got the chance to watch the movie, but I talked to people who did, and
Hmm.
they say it's. I mean, it's difficult to watch, but it's necessary. I think it's. I pretty much I could say pretty much the same thing about the article because it's filled with a lot of gruesome details. But I think no matter how gruesome it is, I think everyone should read this because it took me a few weeks to verify all the information in the article, but I was able to do it. And it's longer than the article I usually write. It's about 1,400 words. But I just had to write it because what's going on now, it's just insane. I mean, they're not just kidnapping, underage people to avoid the algorithms, I guess. They are actually not just using them for like sexual exploitation, but they're using them for organ harvesting, which is like one of the worst things you can do to anyone, I guess, especially to a child. So, and they're doing it to like 11-month-old babies. Like they've recently caught a guy who tried to sell an 11-month-old baby, and like he posted bail and he got released by this court person, like judge, I guess, Natalia Shumilo in a Western Ukrainian city. Like
We'll
they,
we'll we'll leave it at that. I like, man. I've already got strikes. I've already been shadow
yeah,
banned for
I know.
sure.
I just like
Like
recommend people to read the
we'll
article.
leave we'll leave a link. We'll leave a link, and
Yeah,
we'll
it
let
is
people go
pretty gruesome.
directly to this article because yeah, it sounds like something worth discussing. But unfortunately, this comedy
Yeah,
show is not funny enough to have
yeah,
10,000
or, yeah,
viewers and a lawyer who can sue YouTube and Google to get us back on.
yeah.
Or yeah. So in that vein, um, working brother is just me, as some of you might have noticed recently on the Telegram post. There are no teams or we in working brother. So buy me a coffee if you'd like. There's that option now. You can now buy me a coffee. Link in the description. Um, U.S. sends stolen weapons to Kiev while condemning China for alleged military aid to Russia. The jokes write themselves. Um, tell us about this joke you wrote about in a serious
Yeah,
manner.
so the U.S. Navy is enforcing international law by
Lol.
essentially being pirates who are like simply intercepting Iranian ships and taking everything from them, including weapons in this case. And now, like a lot of these weapons are going to be sent to the Ukrainian army. I mean, so far, like so much about the Russians running out of weapons, I guess. And at the same time, so the West is like boasting about this, like saying hey, like we're gonna not just arm Ukraine, but we're gonna like steal weapons from other countries and then arm Ukraine once again. And then they will condemn China for alleged arms shipments, like a sovereign independent country, and not just like an independent country, but a global superpower. They're condemning it for doing business with another global superpower, with like neither of which have anything to do with the West, right?
So this is
So
Chinese propaganda, huh?
yeah, that's the Chinese propaganda, obviously. So like, there's not even proof that the Chinese are arming the Russians. Like, they might be like, obviously, like exporting stuff like, I don't know, chips and stuff like that, but there's no proof that the Chinese are arming the Russians, nor because the Russians have more than enough weapons of their own. But at the same time, like they're boasting about stealing weapons from other countries. So like, just wanted to point out the hypocrisy and double standards in this case. Like they're painfully obvious, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, we've got a meme about this next story. Niger or Niger,
Yeah.
or that former French colony. Why don't you tell us about this while I dig up the meme? It's actually a political cartoon.
Yeah. Well, of course, the French are not very happy with the fact that they will not be getting any resources from Niger. I mean, freedom and democracy was not going to be as prevalent in Niger as it was before, which is bad, obviously. So I would just like to quote the Traoré, the General Traoré, who's actually leading the Niger now. He said that France has been giving them aid for 63 years, and they've been poor for all those 63 years. So now they're going to try
That's
not to get
the
all that aid.
that
Uh,
that's the really young general guy, right?
yeah, like
Is he a
I mean,
general or is he a captain or colonel, or I think he's
yes,
like
he was. I think he was like the leader, or one of the like leading officers in the presidential guard, and it's very possible he just styles himself as a general now because he's leading the country effectively. I'm not sure what his rank was before the coup, but now I guess he's a general, I suppose. So the point is the French now realize they will not be able to exploit Niger as they did like all these decades. So they're contemplating an invasion of this country. However, there are problems. Like they have bases in several West African and other African countries. So what they want to do specifically, I think it's in the Ivory Coast and Senegal where they have like bases. They also have bases in Gabon, and they had like near constant military presence in Chad. The problem is, like, they have to go through other countries because neither of these countries, with the exception of Chad, actually borders Niger. So, when they said there will be a military intervention, they would have to go through Mali. So Mali said they will, and Burkina Faso as well. Both of these countries said that an attack on Niger will be the same as an attack on themselves. So effectively, they said, like, don't touch Niger or you will have to fight all of us. So the French now have a very big problem. They can't go through Burkina Faso and Mali from these other countries where they have the military to attack Niger because like they're going to have to attack these countries as well, which could turn into like a Pan-African war, or let's say Franco-African war. They could try to go through Chad, but the problem is like that area which borders Niger, it's all desert. So like it's very difficult, like Niger
for
has a very good
navigation? Yeah.
chance to step up to this invasion. And the Americans have been relatively quiet about this, which I guess shows at least a modicum of geopolitical wisdom, which we almost never see in Washington, D.C. nowadays. Victoria
Yeah, that
Nuland
doesn't. Yeah, I
went
was just
there.
gonna say she went there personally, and that doesn't mean that all their like covert ops are not, busy on the ground.
Yeah, no,
Um,
covert ops are in place, definitely. But like they didn't have any of these belligerent statements that they usually have when it comes to this, which means they might be reluctant to engage militarily because having like all these wars, around the globe, it's not going to be very, very well for them, because this was a popular uprising where the people of Niger were just sick and tired of being exploited by foreign powers. And the people support this. Like there's a very, very strong support behind this. So it's not like it's Western orchestrated or something. It was like, for the most part, it came from within, because people were just sick and tired. And it's very difficult to fight that, because like you can't just kill all of the people of Niger, right? Like you can't just. I mean, you could try, obviously, there is a possibility they will try, but it's going to be, like it's going to be draining the resources instead of like the West getting resources, and this already is a defeat of sorts for them. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
The decolonization of Africa continues.
Yeah.
Friend of the show and friend of yours as well, XF Hawking the Florist, commented on his channel the other day that not a world war if Africa's not invited.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's move on to these Russian massive Baltic Sea naval drills that trashed the NATO lake fantasies that I hadn't even heard about until you sent me the article.
Yeah,
Tell us more.
The naval drills were held in the aftermath of the NATO summit in Vilnius in Lithuania. And the interesting thing is, one of the messages that NATO sent during that pointless summit was that the Baltic Sea effectively became a NATO lake. I mean, to a large degree, that could be true if Russia wasn't on the Baltic, right? So the point is, the Russians really do have like relatively small coastal areas on the Baltic Sea, which is only like the Kaliningrad and the St. Petersburg Oblast, or the Leningrad Oblast, actually. But like, it's Russia, like, I mean, it's not like some small country. So like, that's more than enough for the Russian Baltic fleet to be a very, very serious force in the Baltic Sea, even though like it's relatively small in comparison to the rest of the Russian Navy. Still, they were able to like conduct these drills, which completely trashes the entire idea that the Baltic Sea is a NATO lake, because I mean, obviously it's a play word for the Roman version of the Mediterranean being a Roman lake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Mediterranean was a Roman lake. There was no other navy present in the Mediterranean at all during the Roman Empire. However, there is the Russian Navy present in the Baltic Sea, so like that sort of comparison simply doesn't hold, and the Russians proved that with this exercise.
Hold on, I'm just loading up some maps here so that people can see what we're talking about, because some people might not know what lake we're talking about. It's not actually a lake, it's a sea right here.
Yeah, it's a sea, obviously. But,
I know. I'm just making fun of the NATO terminology. Yeah, back to your article. People, find the links in the description to Drago's Telegram, where he posts all of his stuff. Is the U.S. pulling the plug on Kiev? I saw this news. I laughed out loud. Like, I was busy doing real life stuff and getting sick, and then I saw this and I was like, lol.
Yeah.
This sounds like the fat lady singing, as in the end.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Taiwan was it became a sort of like a sideshow during the crisis in Ukraine. However, like
you mean with Pelosi's visit, and
Yeah.
they're like, will they shoot it down or not?
yeah, like pretty much that point, but like it became sort of like a sideshow, but still like covertly a lot of things were happening. Things that most people wouldn't be able to see or
I think
understand.
the British sent some missiles there as well, right? Like
Yeah.
anti-ship missiles, like 2,000 or 200 or some ridiculous number. That's going to make no
200,
difference.
200. The Americans already actually promised to send 400 anti-ship missiles, specifically the Harpoon. I mean, these are old missiles. All those missiles, anti-ship missiles, they're sending, they're relatively old, but there's a lot of them, and it's definitely like a challenge
When
to
you say
any.
old, Harpoon sounds like Falkland War era, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's like late 1970s era missile.
Yeah,
So and
yeah.
it's subsonic. Like for example, if you compare it to the Zircon hypersonic anti-ship missile or actually multi-purpose missile that the Russians have, it's ridiculous. Like it's 20 times slower. So it's not really a comparison. But the point is, if you send 400 anti-ship missiles, even if like 10% of those.
Oh, we seem to have lost him. Drago, are you there? Happened while we were setting up for the call. Let's see if he comes back to us. Oh, Drago, you're back.
We
Excellent.
had a
We,
sort of a connection issue, I guess.
it's
Sorry about
it's
that.
it's tradition. Don't be sorry.
Yeah,
It's tradition. Bad humor, poor audio, um,
that,
and technical difficulties. It's what we do here. Like, share, and subscribe. But we make it through. We make it through. That's what matters. We
yeah,
were talking about Taiwan's useless missiles from the 70s that are
yeah,
recycled donations from the West.
yeah, yeah. So like the point is like even if you have like 10% of these, let's say 400 missiles going through, not being shot down by Chinese air defenses, that's still like 40 ships that could be destroyed. And those ships would all be like landing ships where they're carrying Chinese troops. So like that's the real issue. And I think that's one of the reasons why China is not really, keen on like taking Taiwan by force. But they have to be ready to do it, but they're not really like happy about that because, like anti-ship missiles are very effective against any ship. So the point is like the US ignored Taiwan, like at least officially, but not just officially, but also practically because like they had to send all these weapons to the Ukrainians. So the problem is like the Ukrainians are getting so-called aid, which means they're not paying yet for the weapons yet. On the other hand, the Taiwanese paid $20 billion for the weapons that they're not getting yet. So the point is like in order to like give these weapons as sort of again aid for Taiwan, the Americans are now allowing the president. I mean, the Congress wants to allow the president to use the funds that are allocated for Ukraine to arm Taiwan. So like they're getting themselves into like they're getting
Like
themselves bogged down into a fight
and
with two superpowers at the same time. So it's
and they're
I don't
doing
know.
like cross accounting with like double books and like
Yeah, yeah, pretty
lending
much.
schemes and investments and like I can only imagine how much money is being milked off the top.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Having a background in finance, yeah. But what do you make of like okay, yeah, they got 400 missiles, even if they've got like 7,000 missiles, and if you say like 10% of them get through, and if they've got 7,000, that's 700 missiles. What about China's merchant marine? Doesn't China have like
Yeah, it does.
25,000 boats that they can
Yeah,
send like
yeah.
little tiny
But
boats?
the problem is like not all boats, like a very few of these boats are would be suitable for a landing operation, like a naval landing operation. Like there are specific types of ships that are used that sort of operations, for those kinds of operations. So the point is like it's not very easy to like muster a merchant fleet and use it for such military purposes. That's what the Americans are hoping to accomplish. Like if if they destroy all these specialized ships, a sort of a naval invasion is going to be very very difficult to accomplish. So the point is that the Chinese are probably that's why the Chinese are not like conducting a lot of naval drills. What they're doing, they're conducting air force drills. And what they're trying to do is they're going to try to locate these launchers before they are used, and then destroy them
Hmm.
with air launched missiles, and then send in the ships. So that's why the Chinese the military is focused on air power projection over Taiwan rather than naval projection at this point, because that's going to come later on when the Air Force secures their superiority, so they could just target these anti-ship missiles before they're used against the Navy.
Speaking of ships, missiles, and stuff like that, by pure coincidence, haha, because this is a comedy show, we've got the next article lined up where you wrote about NATO aggression against Russia becomes total war. What do you mean NATO aggression? I thought this was Ukraine defending itself and the freedom of the
From a bad
seas of the Black Sea, shooting down civilian ships. What happened to this ship? Did it sink?
No, it didn't sink. There was a lot of damage. That specific ship there is a chemical tanker, SIG, I think, SIG. So the point about that tanker is it's used for Russian military ops in Syria. I mean, specifically, it's used for logistics. Like it's used to deliver fuel and other stuff to the Russian forces in Syria, and it was targeted. And of course, the targeting was provided by the U.S. What the Americans
Wait,
are
wait,
doing,
wait. What do you mean the targeting was provided by the U.S.? That sounds like Russian propaganda. You have to like
it
qualify
is,
that.
is obviously, I'm just joking. The Ukrainians are using all these thousands of satellites that they launched themselves, so obviously, and that they are just loaning to NATO, I guess. So the whole point is like, in all seriousness, I think this is combined with the fact that through the sanctions against Russian merchant fleet, the Americans are trying to, and the West, I mean, as a whole, is trying to take away the possibility of insuring Russian tankers, which means like they actually get some sort of damage compensation in case that their ships are lost. Now they can't do that because all Western companies still dominate insurance for ships. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to make sure that not just the Russian forces in Syria are not getting like their logistics. They want to make sure that other countries don't buy Russian oil, like because
And
if
Russian grain, probably too.
yeah, or Russian grain or anything that's being
Fertilizer.
transported by ships. So the point is like if you can't ensure the safety of the cargo, a country might be like discouraged to buy things from you. That's like the logic behind these such attacks, and this is why it can be considered total war. Because if you want to prevent a country from having normal naval trade, that's going to cause economic damage. So this is exactly what they're trying to do, and the fact that they hit the Novorossiysk port, which is one of the largest Russian export hubs, naval hubs. This also reinforces that idea that they're trying to start a total war against Russia. And also, speaking about total war, the fact that they're using drones to hit all these business areas in Moscow, like militarily, those attacks are completely like pointless. However, if you want to disrupt normal economic activity in the most important financial part of the city, that's exactly like what you're trying to do. You're just like trying to
It's terrorism,
ensure.
plain and simple. By definition of terrorism, go look it up.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Intimidation of civilian population by
And
psychological
the thing
or
is, like,
military means.
this has
Yeah.
been used by other Russian enemies. Like Hitler actually launched a total war against the Soviet Union. He actually called it total war. I think he was one of the first leaders in the
You
world to
know,
use that.
you know,
And
I was watching Defense Politics Asia the other day, and when this happened, he was saying that some of the NAFO and the pro-West Twitter verse was saying that this was a legitimate attack because this is like used for military purposes, blah 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 blah, and his comment was basically like, okay. Okay, if you want to play that way with Russia, then okay. you know, and you're referencing total war, which is basically what this opens the Pandora's box of.
exactly, exactly. And the Russians have the best anti-ship missiles in the world because obviously during the Soviet era, they knew they will face the most powerful navies in the world, which are the Western navies still, by and large. So they're going to make the best anti-ship missiles. So if they're going to play this game, I'm not sure it's going to end well for them because do they have such anti-ship missiles to ensure that Russia doesn't have any shipping? Well, the Russians can do the same, and from a lot longer distances and with much greater speed because they actually have hypersonic and
Yeah.
supersonic anti-ship missiles.
Yep. We've got a returning topic. One of the best running jokes, that gift that keeps on giving. If you're new here, like, share, and subscribe. Sanctions propel Russia to Europe's largest economy. I don't know what to say about this. It was expected.
Yeah.
Like, sanctions are working.
Yeah.
Russia is collapsing. Tell us more.
Yeah, like this is like this specific metric when it comes to the economy is called the GDP PPP, or the purchasing power parity. And this metric is used by the CIA, by the World Bank, by the IMF as like a real, like something that's closest to the real size of the country's economy, because nominal GDP is mostly useless and it's used usually for propaganda purposes. I mean, if we look at the nominal GDP, the US is still the largest economy in the world, and the Chinese have like 35 or 40% of global manufacturing. So like it's ridiculous to even claim that America is still the largest economy in the world. It is the most influential because of the dollar, but it's like nowhere near to the largest one anymore. And the interesting thing, the Chinese overtook the US economy in 2014 in terms of PPP, or the purchasing power parity, as I said. So now, when this metric is used, the Russians have actually they overtook the German economy, and now they're worth like $5.51 trillion, which is 38% more than the projected value of 3.9 trillion that was like projected for 2022. So in 2022, the Russians have not just been able to fight the entire NATO, they've also been able to grow their economy to the largest one in Europe and the fifth one in the world. Like now they're the fifth economy on the planet.
Russian propaganda.
Yeah,
Russian
more
propaganda.
propaganda. Like so it's been a very successful year for them geopolitically and geoeconomically. And the IMF was forced to admit that. I mean, in the article, there's actually a link to the IMF assessment, so people can see it. I mean, it's not just like I'm,
So the
spouting.
IMF has been infiltrated by Russians, is what I'm hearing
Yeah,
from you.
yeah. I would say that that's the case. The IMF has been infiltrated by Putin's evil agent.
Yeah. Moving right along to the next joke. Woke extremist ideology in the U.S. military. Danger or blessing to the world? Well, I don't think it's a blessing. It might be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah,
But tell
it
us
is
more
a
about what
blessing
you
in
wrote about.
disguise. That's one of the points I made in the article. It could be a blessing in disguise because it's actually weakening the U.S. military, which means other countries will be safer. That's the blessing part that I referenced in the article. The dangerous part is there are some nuclear energy officials in the U.S. That have been part of this woke ideology, I guess. And the interesting thing is,
When
most
you
people
mean
don't know.
when you say nuclear energy officials, you mean like people in the military who have their trigger on the nuclear button?
Something along those lines. I'll explain shortly. So the point is, like, most people don't know that the Department of Energy in the U.S. actually works together with the Department of Defense to maintain the American nuclear arsenal. And
Wait. I have to give a recommendation. TV show now that Oppenheimer the movie is cool again,
yeah,
and the whole story. Check out the TV show called Manhattan. It's about the Manhattan Project, and yeah, most people don't know that the atomic energy industry as a whole is a byproduct of the weapons nuclear industry, not the other way
exactly,
around.
exactly.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah, so I was just about to say that one of the these officials was a guy called Sam Brenton, if I'm not mistaken about about the last name. People should look him up. He's hilarious to say the least. And like this guy was a kleptomaniac, and he was like stealing, other people's purses, especially, I mean, women's purses. And this guy was one of the highest, like one of the high-ranking officials of the Department of Energy, and like they call him a nuclear waste guru. So in that regard, like the woke ideology in the U.S. Is dangerous because, like, such individuals with a highly questionable mental capacity, so to speak, are hold such high positions in a very, very crucial industry and part of the American defense system.
We
And
are not promoting hate speech. These are just jokes,
jokes,
and
obviously,
more than jokes. This is just like parody. It's
yeah,
nothing to do with real life.
yeah, and we are offering our support for these people because they're
Yeah.
making the U.S. military more progressive, so to speak.
Yes.
It's going to be good for world security, and I'm not even joking now. I mean, it really is for the world security because more
The like
U.S.
serious
military
part is the
is,
funniest part
yeah, yeah, yeah,
of the
like
talk.
like the more woke the U.S. military is, the better the better it is for the rest of the world, I guess.
Unless it turns to drone nuclear warfare, then we're all doomed.
Yeah.
World War III or not? Have we started yet? Leave a comment. Let's see. We've got one last article, I think, here. Oh, yes, just in line with that last comment. World War III. Have we started yet or not? Leave a comment. No, I'm not repeating myself. I'm just saying it again.
Yeah.
Tell us what you think. You wrote an article about it. You didn't leave a comment.
Yeah. Like in this case, I mentioned what's been going on in the last month or so, and these like U.S. war hawks are now gaining momentum, I guess, in the U.S. establishment and getting higher positions of power. I mentioned several of them in this article. I mentioned John Bolton, the guy who's like very big on spreading freedom and democracy by all means necessary. Also, like his
That's the
pal,
UN guy, huh?
yeah, yeah, like the guy with the mustache and the
The
glasses.
funny looking UN guy. Yeah.
Yeah, like he was actually one of Trump's, I think, secretary. I'm not.
Advisors or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the guys in his administration, but Trump fired the guy because he saw like the guy's fucking insane. Like he's just literally like just wants to start wars whenever and wherever. Like he doesn't care where the war will start as long as it starts. And then there's the Lindsey Graham, the clown in the U.S. Congress, who's also like very big on bombing everything he sees. Like he recently threatened Mexico to bomb Mexico because there are cartels, across the border. I mean, I don't think it deserves any additional comment. So and there's also like, but there are others who are more dangerous. So, for example, I mentioned in the article, I mentioned Victoria Nuland, the cookie lady
Hmm.
that helped bring
The
freedom.
F the EU.
Yeah, FDU. I mentioned that in the article as well. I mentioned, although I didn't say that, I just mentioned that she demonstrated what she thinks about the EU involvement in American decision making. Um, and also, like she's known for her cookies that brought freedom and democracy to Ukraine, which is playing out great for the Ukrainians now, I guess. So uh, like I mentioned what is going on and how these people are gaining more power in the U.S. I also mentioned the new chief of chief of joint staff in the U.S. Armed Forces, General James Brown. He was the head of the U.S. Air Force until recently. I mean, he still is the head of the U.S. Air Force, but he's going to replace Mark Milley as the top commander in the U.S. Army, in the U.S. Armed Forces. This guy has been like lobbying for war with China for 5 or 6 years now, even longer maybe. So like now we have two people who are in highest positions of power. Now Victoria Nuland is going to be the acting deputy secretary of state behind Antony Blinken, in the secretary in the State Department, and we're gonna have the top anti-Chinese guy in the military. So, like, one side is like rabidly anti-Russian, the other side is becoming rabidly anti-Chinese. So, does this sound good for world peace to you? I'm not sure if I believe that. So
It sounds like we need the French to like start some shit in Africa so that we can have a
yeah,
world war. That's the only thing that's missing. Oh, we already discussed that.
yeah, we discussed that, but like the whole point is these people, they don't have an offering. They don't think about the consequences. Like it's almost as if I don't know, school children would lead a better foreign policy than these people for the U.S., I guess.
There's the argument of willful idiots. Then there's the argument of people who want to also bring the apocalypse and the end of the world so
Yeah.
they can, be raptured or whatever. And then there's actual misinformed idiots who think that the U.S. is still global superpower number one, not to be challenged by anyone. For those of you who stuck around all the way to the end, we've got this wonderful piece of art that came across my feed on Telegram. Don't know who the author is, but how's the counteroffensive going? This is basically how it's going. Drago, any comments you'd like to make before we close this talk off?
Yeah, I think I've talked more than enough for this one.
Everyone who stuck around, thank you for sticking around. You can buy me a coffee. Everyone who's bought me coffees, especially that one someone. There's like someone who's anonymous who bought me like 20 coffees. Thank you for that. That will definitely power me through the day. Drago, thank you for stopping by again. Everyone, like, share, subscribe if you're new here. See you around. We'll be back.